Good morning and welcome back to Plannercraft. I'm Natalie and today we're going to be finishing off our scrapbook layout from yesterday. So, first of all, don't be afraid to say hi and let me know that you're watching. If you have any questions, then please don't be afraid to ask. And good morning, Deb. I'm just waiting for the multi-stream text to wake up so I can see all your comments. There we go. Takes a little bit of a while to kick in. So today I'm going to be using some watercolor effects stamps. Now these ones are from Stampin' Up, but that's not to say that you couldn't use any other watercolor like stamps that you have in your collection. So basically you're looking for a stamp that has a bit of a watercolor effect to the actual texture of the stamp, so that we have that actually come into our layout. I'm going to be working on top of a messy mat, so that we can be doing some blending. So pop that underneath the background. And I'm going to be mainly focusing around each of the apertures. Good morning, Carol. Hopefully you're feeling a little better today. So, in terms of ink colours, I've pulled out saltwater taffy, iced spruce and cracked pistachio, which may seem that this is really bright if you look at the colour on the label, but I do actually put a colour swatch on the side of my ink pads to kind of give me a bit of a guide. It's never going to be perfect because obviously the label material is going to be slightly different to your cardstock, so do also have a little swatch book made if you can. So I'm going to start off with my saltwater taffy so that I can get some nice bits of colour into our background. I'm going to use a combination of blending brushes so that we can just have some nice simple colour added into the background and the stamps to bring in the texture. Good morning, Linda. Okay, so if you missed yesterday's setup video, do go back and watch. It's a really useful one for learning how to set up grids on your machine without having to use canvas. And we're going to grab a stamp block, any stamp block. And let's grab our first stamp. So I'm just going to go for this kind of splodge background one. And I'm not even going to use it as a whole image. So that's onto our block. Then we need to decide what colours are going where. So again, yesterday I showed you my notebook that I've kind of planned what's going where. So we have photo, photo, photo going down this way. So what you don't want to do is have like saltwater taffy going this one, this one, this one. You want to kind of scatter it out a bit. So I think I'm going to go, given that those all match, I'm going to change it up slightly. And let's go, see, you don't want to go in a column. I might go and do a little bit of a diagonal like that. Okay, so I'm going to start off with my stamp. And I'm trying to lightly ink, but just remember that when you do that, you can find that you just get a load of lines on your stamp. So you want to try and smooth those out as much as possible so that you're not carrying that line texture across to your stamped image. Okay. Now, another point, have some scrap paper to one side that you can actually test out your colours on, because sometimes you'll want to use the first impression. sometimes you'll want to use the second. So if we bring this in here and then compare it to our paper, we can see that actually it's a little bit strong, so that means that we can use a second impression. And I'm just going to go across our aperture, like so. So now we can ink up again. I'm going to stamp it onto my scrap piece of paper, and this time let's go vertically. Okay, and don't worry if you've got little bits of your image that are missing. That's just going to end up, when we do our blending, just looking a little bit more subtle. When I had my phone consultation, I had to send photos, which was a bit tricky, to say the least. Trying to take photos of one's hands is awkward. Not so bad when you're photographing your left hand and you can use the right hand to use the camera, but it was a little bit more interesting. Now, as I said before, you could be tempted to go there, but I think just because we've got these three consistent contents in these, I'm just going to swap it up a bit. So actually, let's go and go into the middle here. Okay. So now at this point, I'm going to give my stamp a good clean. So I'm just going to use a bamboo cloth and some plain water. Now I sprayed my cloth rather than the stamp just because I'm running out of a little bit of room on my desk. So you don't want to be spraying your stamp if it's sitting on top of your work. Okay, so with that clean, let's go and do the next colour. So I'm going to go to the ice spruce next. Now this is going to come up an awful lot darker than what you need it. So this is definitely going to be a second, if not a third impression. So there's our first one. And I'm even going to go to a second, and then we can go and do the third impression. Just so we've got a bit of a subtle texture. Again, lightly ink, stamp it once, stamp it twice, and then we can rotate that round. Now just be aware, if you're using the same piece of scrap paper like I am, you can pick up some of your older colour, but that's fine for what we're doing. It's going to kind of have all these elements kind of blending in together anyway. And I'm going to come across here, and this time I'm going to go vertically because we've got horizontal going on here. Like so. Now a quick clean. And then we can try the crap pistachio. So at this point I'm going to turn my paper over. So let's stamp it once. And that green's definitely too strong on that first impression. Stamp it again. Still a bit strong, but hopefully number 3 should be fine. So for this next one, because we've got a few interesting areas, that one's going to go vertically, like so. There's still plenty of ink on this stamp actually, so I think I'm just going to go and take this one. Oh, let's go diagonally for a change. One like so. And we can do the same over here. Yeah, I don't quite get why they can't see people in face to face. It's very annoying. I mean, even if there is something visual, cameras don't pick up everything the same way that human eyes do. Our eyes are much better at seeing subtleties than a camera is. Okay, so with that done, we're going to get our blending brushes out. So you want to pick a blending brush for each colour, and I want a green and a sort of neutrally blending brush. I think that might be a bit more for the pink actually. There we go. Okay, so typically with my blending brushes I'll keep them to kind of colour family rather than an individual ink pad. And we're just going to work nice and lightly. So you're not going to be wanting to scrub at your ink pad because all the colours are much too strong for what we need. So all we're going to do is just lightly tap. So that you can see that you've got a little bit of ink. If I get the angle right, you can see just there. A little tiny bit. And we're going to start in the middle and we're going to brush around the outside. Now bear in mind that when you do this you're going to get like a dark halo just to that edge. Okay, but don't worry about that because when we come to put our frame on it you're not going to see that too much. Now if we were doing this with wet watercolour instead of using a stamp, you'd find that that edge kind of started to pill and lift, which we didn't want. So that's why we're using watercolour stamps rather than going full on watercolour. If you wanted to use watercolour, or if you don't have any watercolour stamps, instead of having cut this grid out, you would draw it with a watercolour pencil, do your watercolour, pop it back on your mat, back in the machine, and then cut out your apertures once it's all dry. Really important point to make that. Make sure it's all dry before it goes back in your machine. And with the colour you want it to kind of extend past the frame as much as possible. So if you think you haven't gone quite far enough for the frame that you've cut, keep going. It's much better to build up layers of colour than try and do it all in one go, because it's quite easy to add more colour, not possible to take it away again. So even if you try to use a white ink pad, you're never going to successfully remove colour. Last one for this particular brush. Okay, so now that we've got that far, before you go much further, just grab one of your cut frames and actually check that your ink blending goes out enough. So in this case we've got two of our large rectangle apertures, which is this frame here, like so. Now bear in mind we've got that 1mm offset. Hi Mum! We've got a bit there too, and another of those tall ones, like so. So this bottom one's looking alright, but we can't really see the colour on this centre panel here. So I'm just going to extend that a little bit more. So you could do that through using a splatter stamp, so you don't have to just do more ink blending if you don't want to. Not everybody enjoys it. I'm just going to take this colour up a little bit further. And a bit more up to this top corner here as well. There we go. So now we can swap colour. And let's go to the ice spruce next, which is our more neutral colour. And again, we don't want very much colour, so we're just going to tap. And you can see already on our brush that that is really strong. So I'm just going to tap that onto my messy mat. And that's going to help distribute the colour across your brush. But it is also going to mean that when we come to do our ink blending, you're not going to get a sudden splodge. Okay, then when you're ready, you can start to gently swirl. Now your blending brush is a rounded surface, so when you're tapping, try and change the angle. Somewhat exaggerating the movement there, but you get the idea. So that you get that ink all the way around your brush. Then as you're blending, you're going to find you get better blend. So again, tap around the brush, take it round the outside. I also tend to change the direction in which I'm rotating as well, so you'll see that sometimes I go around this way, then I'll change and change, so that it's not getting a kind of swirl pattern all the way around. More important with things like the looser kind of blending brushes, more paintbrush like ones. And then I kind of do a backwards and forward motion just to do like the last little bit blending. And over to this one. So let's see if I can move that up a bit. Tap, 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 tap. So we can do that same check again. So we have an oval one. A larger rectangle. A smaller rectangle. Like so. So this top one I think just needs a little extra on it. But the other two are okay. So I'm just going to use what's left in my brush. Because these brushes hold a lot of ink. When you come to actually clean them out properly, you'll be there for a long time to get all that ink out. Okay. Just double check that again. So this is the thickest frame out of the three that we did. So I'm not surprised that it needs just that little extra. Okay, and finally we're going to go to our cracked pistachio. Okay, a little bit more. Okay. So if you have any splatter stamps, these can be a good way of extending that colour if you want to. You could take your splatters out into your whiter areas of your layout too. All depends on the effect that you're going for. And go. So remember, with these two, you want that colour to go out that little bit further because our frame's thicker. Okay, that should be enough. So for now, we're going to set that to one side and let it dry. In terms of your messy mat, just with a damp cloth, just get that excess off so it's not transferring to anything else. Even when it looks like there's nothing there, there'll be like a smearing of that kind of oxide formula, so it's always a good idea to give it a good clean. Put that down. So, I'm going to refer back to my original note, and let's start off by doing this top pattern here, which is going to be this one. And we've got that green outside, so I think I'm going to go for this nice orangey colour. Now what I'm going to do is just grab a pencil and just trace around the outside frame. Now you'll notice I'm not being very careful here. This isn't about having a nice accurate outline to cut round, and it's all going to be perfect. It's just there as a guide, like so. So then I can get my scissors, and all I'm going to do is just cut that out very roughly. This is going to be stuck to the back of our background, so we don't have to have it all pretty. Okay. Then the next one, we have a solid, and that is going to be the oval. So we're going to pull out an oval. So that has the cracked pistachio around the outside of the frame. So I'm going to go to the pink. And we can do the same again. Around the outside. That's the next one. Okay. Then we have another one of those, which is going to be another solid, but we don't want to go for the same solid because we've already got a cracked pistachio outline with the pink, so we're going to go to our green. Just check you got the right side, and let's go around again. Ding, ding. Oh. Cool. Don't try not to slip on the front of your frame. I'll tidy that up in a minute. Ding, 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 ding. So we're using our outside of our frame so that we know we have enough of a distance to actually adhere that paper to our background. So then the centre one is going to be a photo, then we're back to a pattern with the grey. So this time I'm going to go to this one, and it's our other frame, so this one here. And this is where you're going to want to be a little bit more careful. Where you have something that has a really strong grid like this, you want to make sure that you keep that grid upright. I'd also allow a little extra in terms of when you're cutting it out, just in case you decide that you need to do a little bit of a rejig on where that grid's going. Okay. Just going to cut along the grid line. The centre one again is a photo, then we have another, make sure I get this right, yep. So then we've got another pattern that's going to go down to oval. And this is where we're going to pull out another pattern paper. And with this one I'm going to kind of work out where I want that pattern to go. So because it's quite a small aperture, you want something that's going to be quite intricate, so you've got a good kind of range of pattern across this particular paper. And finally another solid. So the last solid we did was the green, so we're going to finish off with pink. I'm going to flip it over and use the reverse so that we've got a different shade of pink. That's useful to know, Sue. So thank you for sharing that. And the middle bottom one is another big rectangle. So very quickly, I'm just going to go like that, because we've kind of already got a cut line to go to. And there we go. So far so good. Now, let's start by by adhering all our frames to the front. So if you get any pencil marks on these at all, it's probably easier to remove them after you've applied them, rather than trying to do it while they're still frames. So these were cut from self-adhesive cardstock for those of you that missed yesterday. So it's nice and easy to just peel off that backing, line it over the aperture, and job done. Now with these ones, we've got that 1mm offset, so just try and get that as close to centre as possible. If you don't get it spot on, don't worry, because by the time it'll be finished, you're going to be able to have a beautiful page, even if it's slightly off. Okay, next one. It's one of those ones where you're like, should have got my poker tool out. These are just the last two ovals to place. Then I'm thinking, once we've done that, we can then do a little bit of direct cutting using our ScanNCut, just to pull out some of the decorative elements from the papers. So not doing too bad for time. Could you use sticker paper instead of the self-adhesive cardstock? Yeah, I'm used to that particular typo. It loves to do that as an autocorrect. It's very annoying when you're writing books. So, could you use sticker paper? Yes, you can. You could use vinyl. You don't have to use cardstock. The reason that I've used cardstock is I particularly like the texture and the depth it's going to give, especially when you're going to be back mounting those patterns as well. So that means by the time you get to that background, you've got 2 layers of card. But if you don't want that, then vinyl is going to help your page stay kind of flatter. If you don't like that kind of recessed look that you're going to get back by sticking it back there, then what you can do is instead stick it to the back of your frame, so you just got like one little layer rather than the 2. So you've got options. It's a little bit tricky to get the alignment if you don't cut your background piece, but it's not impossible. Okay, so with that done, so the solid is going to go down the bottom here. So this is always going to be slightly tricky because you're going to be kind of sticking from the back. I'm going to go for, where can my double-sided gone on my little dog again? Probably means it's staring at me. But I'm just going to pop some double-sided tape along there. and this is just going to hold it in place while I make sure alignment is okay. So that's going to go into that bottom section there, and I want to make sure that I'm not getting that particular piece in there. There we go. Now with that kind of stuck, I can just literally go just underneath with a little bit of wet glue around the outside of my frame. Doesn't take very much, less is more, and just smooth that down. First one done. Okay, so next we have our oval pattern. And this one's a little bit easier to do because we've kind of got this safe space up here that we know that we can work with. So, across that top. And there we go. Flip it over. A little bit of wet glue. So just remember, when you're doing scrapbook pages like this, these are going to be going into pockets. So you don't have to have them perfectly did all the way around. But at the same point, you do want to use glues and tapes that are acid free. Archival safe, so that you're not getting your pages yellowing or eventually having things like little grease marks coming through, because that's just upsetting when that happens. Pattern. So again, a bit more tape. Only I can use my tape when I put it down. So I'm going to go along the wider edge here. So this is our grid one, so this is where you want to be cautious about making sure that you get your grid upright. So I'm going to pop my grid paper down on my map with the pattern showing upwards. I've peeled off the backing paper, although it doesn't look like it on camera, which is a bit weird. And then I'm going to offer up my layer over the top. I'm going to place one of my cut lines up against the straight edge of the grid and just go from there. But yes, autocorrect does not understand the word cardstock. It's very annoying, especially when you're trying to like do a very quick bit of help for somebody on Facebook and you just type it and send it and then you go, oh, seriously? And no matter how many times I teach my machine that hits cardstock, it still tries and corrects every single time. So next we're going to be going to this one. So let's get some more double-sided. Again, I'm going to go along the short edge for this one. Now obviously if there's a top and bottom for your frame, just make sure that you've kind of got it up the right way, but there isn't ready for these. So as I said yesterday, I'm not going to be putting photos in on stream, mainly because I haven't decided which one I'm going to use yet, but it's just easier in terms of legalities and things. But you would use exactly the same process for your photos. Or if you're preparing this in advance, then what I would say is you can kind of cut an extra frame for each of your photo mounts and use that as a reference, or save the file and actually use that to cut your photo out, using that same process of separating out the apertures and the outers. And good morning, Louise. So again, just going to get one set here. Pop it out my double-sided. There we go. So one thing I haven't decided on yet is my title. So if you'd like me to do a video on titles, let me know in the comments. I'm going to go there. So there's our layout. So looking very pretty so far. And what I think would look really good if we stuck to either black and white photos or monotone photos. Would be good. Yeah, it does just need a door and a roof, doesn't it? I was thinking like a sort of picture gallery when I designed it. So there's lots of different ways you could do it. So if you wanted to make it look like actual little picture frames, all you got to do is do a little doodle of a string and a nail. But next I've pulled out a couple of papers, and I think it would be really good to kind of fussy cut out some of these elements. Now obviously we could do that by hand, but where would be the fun in that? Let ScanNCut do the work for you. So very quickly tidy up my workspace so that I can get to my machine. And I'm going to want a mat. So in terms of the mats I use artistic mats. I don't tend to use the brother ones very much unless there's a particular purpose I'm using them for. And I'm just going to apply my first paper onto my mat. We'll wake up the ScanNCut. Let's just change view. There we go. We're going to cancel. That's because it switched itself off yesterday. And we'll load in our mat. Okay. And my pencil that I usually use as stylus has gone for a little bit of a break, obviously. There we go. It was there somewhere, it was just hiding. So I'm going to go to scan. I'm going to go to direct cut. I'm going to get the machine to do it. And at the moment it's on colour recognition mode. We're going to go start. And it's going to throw up an issue about the scan lever. So this is where you have your little lever on the side of your machine. It's only on the SDX range, and it's there to raise and lower your scan glass. So when it's lowered, you'll get a more accurate scan, but if you do any drawing, if it was lowered, then you could potentially have some ink transfer. So that's when you would lift it up. we can then use our little window to actually resize. Now if all you want it to do is just a few butterflies, you can size that window right in, okay, so that you have just the number of butterflies that you need. So you want to look at whole butterflies, so that is ones where your outside line does not intersect or goes off the edge of your paper. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm just going to lower that slightly and hopefully get 5. We'll go okay. Then that means that when you're doing your recognition, it shouldn't take as long as if you tried to do an entire sheet. Okay, so you can see that it's a little bit hit and miss, to say the least. Let's see if we can help that out a little. So first of all, let's try and reduce the number of colours. It's a little bit better, but it's not perfect. So let's go up one. And this is another benefit to having done that little shrunken window. Each time that you change a setting, it's going to want to rescan it as such. So obviously if you've done a much larger area, when you're trying to do these things, you're going to struggle a little bit. Now if you can't get it perfect, that's when you can actually hop back to black and white. So it's struggling a little bit to pick those out, so I'm thinking perhaps we should go back to black and white. So I'm going to go to the X and back and back. Okay, direct cut, machine, and this time we can go to black. We can also change our scan area, so if we tap onto that one, you can see that actually we can limit how much it scans. So if we do a 12 by 6, it's only going to do the first 6 inches of your mat. So again, that's going to make it a little bit quicker. So we'll go OK, and you can see it's automatically done that window to that 12 by 6 amount. Now looking at those butterflies, you can see straight away that some are clearer than others. So what we can do is we can use our arrows to actually help us out. So this section here is pretty good. So if we take those like that and in like that, then we can see that we've got pretty much 5 butterflies. So we've got that one's a little bit weird, but we've got that one, that one, that one, that one, that one. So hopefully at least some of those will be okay. But we want to get rid of these little tiny bits. And this is where we can use ignore object size. So by increasing that, you're going to kind of negate more and more shapes. There we go. And when you're doing colour recognition, if you went down to 1, would it have done black and white instead of having to go back to the beginning? No. No. They are different beasts, and they give you different options when you've actually done that scan as well. So I'm going to go OK. Now if I go into the contrast options for black and white, you can see that you have some really different options to what you have in the colour. So we can still fiddle about with the scan in that sense and go, actually that's a bit better, but we've still got a few other little bits and pieces that we're going to take out. So I'm going to go OK. I can go back to object size and just increase those till it knocks those out. Now this top one here, that's pretty much the same size as our butterflies. So if we wanted to knock that one out, you wouldn't want to use ignore object size, because otherwise it would knock out the decent butterflies too. So we're going to go OK. we're going to go edit. We're going to use our little object selection to go through our objects, get to the one we don't want and delete it. So then we have our 5 butterflies. We can go OK. You can use this one here to put an offset around the outside, so if you want to include some of that gridded paper that we've got in the background, you could do that. If your objects are further apart, you can use your shape options instead. So instead of it fussy cutting out a butterfly, for instance, you could get that butterfly cut out inside a circle. But for now, that's just what I need. So I'm going to go OK and cut. As this is more paper-like, I'm just going to use the vinyl blade. Adjust my pressure. OK. And let it do its thing. Now usually what I would say is something where you've got a background pattern like that, usually the colour option would give you the better scan. It's just obviously being a bit different today. Whereas when you have something more like, if I go back over there, this one where you've got a plain background, usually black and white will do you better. If you have a scan where you're getting lots of jagged edges, using the offset function can actually help to smooth the line a little bit, especially on the CM machines, which is where you tend to find more of an issue. So I'm going to very carefully peel off the paper, check that it's cut. That looks successful, so I'm going to go OK and load the mat. And OK. So just go a bit more careful when it comes to where you've actually got the cut butterflies. And there we go. It's one of those ones where you want to basically place your off-cut paper underneath a heavyweight after, just to kind of flatten it back out. So, and there's our butterflies. So you could shape these if you want to and have them all 3D, but for my scrapbook layouts I try to avoid doing too much 3D work because I know I'm going to put them either in an album or in a frame. So I have a few frame 12x12s that we have around. Okay, so now I'm going to swap paper. This is a fairly, well, brand new mat from yesterday, so just be a bit aware of not pressing down too much. We're going to go back to close cam, home to reset, load the mat. Scan, direct cut, machine, and then black and white. Now if you've tried to do a scan and your colour mode with the machine hasn't worked and the black and white mode with the machine hasn't worked, that's when you can resort to canvas instead, and usually canvas will do a better trace. So if you really can't get the results that you want with your machine, take it through into canvas. Go OK, and again we can see that we've got some that are really clear, some which were a bit more hit and miss, so we can cut out the ones that are a bit more hit and miss. Makes our life easier. And we can move in this side so that we don't get the cut edges. Okay, so far so good. Ignore object size, pop that up to take out our little stragglers. There we go. Go OK. Now, because we've got that planar background, we can use offset. And I'm just going to take it up 1 mil. Because some of the elements are a bit close together, you don't want to go too large, otherwise you can actually find that your offset's actually going to overlap each other and it will cut both of them, so that you end up cutting into each other, which is not good. So we're going to go OK. OK. Cut. We now did the last cut OK, so we can just type to go. But yes, you could do the same layout with windows and doors if you wanted to. So it looks more like a house, which would be really good in moving home card. Or keepsake, isn't it? Likewise, if you wanted to do this for a card front, all you've got to do is just scale down the size of these frames. Obviously, the thicker ones will work better at smaller sizes, whereas the thinner one, you could find that gets a little bit fiddly, but it could be that you end up drawing that instead. Or you could use a foil quill and foil it. So there's lots of different ways. If something becomes too fine to cut, then you always have those draw options to consider. Okay. Very gently lift around the edges, and then there we go. So we have our perfectly cut flowers, and you may find that you've done more than you need, but you can save them for another project. And this one, there we go. So now we can start to actually arrange these a little bit. So the dark pink will look better there, and light pink up there. Let's balance this out with some over here. So put dark pink down there. Let's just see if I can get that camera in a bit of a better position. There we go. It's a little bit dark today. Don't know why it's quite so dark. But there we go. Orangey one there. And I'm going to set that butterfly to one side for a moment because I want to make sure I get at least some of the flowers in. I think I might swap those two over so that we've got our stronger pink in the bigger flower, and that's got the orange. We can go like that. Then we have some little ones that we can use to just decorate our photo frames too, like so. So that can go up there. And just make sure that you're happy with everything before you stick it all down. So hopefully you've enjoyed that, and that's taught you lots about how you can use your scanner, lots about how you can use pattern papers, lots about alignment and distribution and grouping. So I think we've covered quite a bit in these past 2 days. So let me know in the comments if you've really enjoyed this particular project and what you've gained from it. And we would love to see your own version of it. So if you go to the group ScanNCut and Papercraft courses, classes and workshop with Plannercraft, you can start an album in there and pop in your version of the project. I will also photograph this later and pop that up so that you can see this one up close too. Take care for now, have a fabulous weekend, and I will see you probably on Monday at 11. Take care and bye.